When I was a child, my mom raised 4 kids on her own in a small house. As the youngest, I slept in a tiny first-floor bedroom beside the living room. My room was cramped, with bare wooden floors and large vents in opposite corners. My bed took up almost half the space. One evening when I was 13 years old, I sat cross-legged on my bed finishing homework because there wasn't enough space for a desk. Suddenly, I heard faint childlike laughter echo through the room. It was soft but unmistakably real. Confused, I walked into the living room and kitchen to see if my siblings were nearby, but everyone was upstairs. Trying to ignore the strange laughter, I returned to my room and continued working, though I stayed alert for any unusual sounds. Then the laughter came again, longer this time. Childlike giggling echoed through the room, sounding unnatural and wrong. Slowly, I followed the sound across the room until I realized it was coming from one of the floor vents. Heart pounding, I knelt beside the vent and pressed my ear against the cold metal grate, listening carefully. For a few moments, everything became completely silent. Then curiosity pushed me to lean closer and peer inside the vent. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness inside the vent, I suddenly saw a pair of eyes staring directly back at me. I screamed and stumbled backward in panic as fear overwhelmed me. Moments later, my mother rushed into the room, but by then the eyes and laughter were gone. No matter how much I explained what I saw, my mother dismissed it as imagination caused by exhaustion. For the next week, I refused to sleep in that room and begged to stay in my mother's bedroom instead. Eventually, I was forced to return to my bedroom, though I never truly felt comfortable there again. Even years later, I still remember those eyes staring at me from inside the vent, and I know what I saw was real. During a long road trip from New Hampshire to Florida, exhaustion forced me to stop at a rundown roadside motel late at night. The parking lot was nearly empty, with only 2 cars sitting under flickering lights. Inside the motel lobby, peeling floral wallpaper and broken-down furniture gave the place a decaying, abandoned feeling. The receptionist barely acknowledged me. Too exhausted to care about the motel's condition, I brushed my teeth quickly and climbed into bed, hoping for a few hours of sleep before continuing my drive. Just as I was about to fall asleep, a sudden knock at the door jolted me awake. The clock beside the bed read 11:57 p.m. I crept toward the door and looked through the peephole, only to find complete darkness staring back at me. Text part. When I finally opened the door, the hallway outside was completely empty and silent. Moments after returning to bed, the knocking came again, louder this time, sending adrenaline through my body. Frustrated and unsettled, I went down to the front desk to confront the receptionist about the strange knocking. The receptionist coldly explained there were no hallway security cameras and only one other guest staying at the motel. Back in my room, I locked the door, put on headphones and played calming sounds from YouTube in an attempt to distract myself from the fear. Even with the calming audio playing, I couldn't stop staring into the dark corners of the room, feeling as though something was watching me. Then I saw it, a towering humanoid figure nearly 10 feet tall standing silently in the far corner of the room. As I stared closer, I noticed one of its long arms twitch slightly at its side. Panicking, I lunged for the bedside lamp and switched it on as fast as I could. The instant the room lit up, the towering figure vanished completely, leaving the corner empty. Without wasting another second, I packed my belongings and rushed out of the room in total panic. At the front desk, I handed over my key and checked out early while the receptionist watched silently. I drove for miles through the empty night until I finally found another hotel far away from that place. At the new hotel, I finally fell asleep peacefully, free from the fear and shadows that haunted the motel. At 27 years old, I was living with my brother James in a quiet house. Life had always felt normal and uneventful, until one strange week changed everything. One evening, I was alone in the kitchen washing dishes before bed when a sudden loud crash shattered the silence. I turned around just in time to see a lightweight blue plastic cup bouncing across the kitchen floor before coming to a stop. Confused but trying not to overreact, I picked up the cup and carefully placed it back on top of the cabinet where it normally sat. Later that night, while lying in bed, I noticed a faint glow shining through my closed window blinds from outside. Too tired to investigate, I convinced myself the glow came from a streetlight and tried to fall asleep. The following day, while James was at work, a storm rolled in. Thunder echoed outside as another loud crash came from the kitchen. When I entered the kitchen, I froze. The same blue cup had fallen again, even after I had carefully stabilized it the night before. As I stood alone in the kitchen staring at the cup, a strange feeling crept over me, as though something unseen was watching. Then I heard a creak directly above me. My bedroom was upstairs and James wasn't supposed to be home yet. Trying to stay rational, I slowly climbed the stairs and searched my bedroom, closets, and under the bed, but found nothing unusual. Satisfied that the room was empty, I switched off the light and headed back downstairs, though the uneasy feeling never left. That night, as I lay in bed again, a sudden knocking sound came directly from my bedroom window. Fear hit me instantly when I remembered my bedroom was on the second floor. No one could possibly be standing outside the window. Gathering the courage to investigate, I lifted the blinds and looked outside, only to find complete emptiness. Terrified and shaken, I rushed to my brother James's room and explained everything that had happened. Too afraid to return upstairs, I spent the rest of the night sleeping in the living room, unable to shake the feeling that something had been watching me. 3 weeks have passed since the incident stopped, but the experience changed me forever. I no longer dismissed the possibility of the supernatural. After an exhausting day working construction and hitting the gym, I was completely drained. Too tired to cook, I grabbed Chipotle on my way home and headed straight back to my apartment. As soon as I got home, I collapsed onto the couch and ate dinner in front of the TV. Within minutes, exhaustion overtook me and I fell asleep under a blanket. A few hours later, I woke up groggy and disoriented. The apartment was dark and silent, and the clock showed 11 p.m. Still half asleep, I shuffled into the bathroom to remove my contacts before finally heading toward my bedroom. Just as I was about to go to bed, I heard a woman's voice clearly call my name from the living room behind me. Without my contacts or glasses, I stumbled back into the living room and called out nervously, "Who's there? Mom?" But no one answered. Realizing I couldn't see clearly, I rushed back to my bedroom and grabbed my glasses from the nightstand. With my glasses on, I cautiously returned to the living room, but the apartment was completely empty and silent. Trying to calm myself down, I eventually went back to bed, convincing myself the voice had been nothing more than exhaustion playing tricks on me. As I stared across the room, I suddenly saw a tall human-shaped figure standing only a few feet from my bed. It looked like a woman with long hair and distorted facial features. I screamed in terror and blindly reached for the lamp and light switch, knocking things over in panic as the figure stood motionless in the darkness. The instant the lights came on, the figure disappeared completely. The room was empty. Still shaking, I searched under the bed, inside closets and throughout the apartment, but there was no sign that anyone else had been there. Eventually, I convinced myself it had just been a hallucination caused by exhaustion. But even now, the memory of that figure feels horrifyingly real. At 21 years old, I worked as a maintenance and custodial staff member at a daycare center connected to a Catholic school and church. Most evenings, after the children and staff had gone home, I stayed behind cleaning classrooms, moving furniture, and locking up the building alone. On a cold Friday evening, my supervisor left early and handed me a long list of closing tasks, including packing away Thanksgiving decorations and bringing up the Christmas decorations from the basement storage area. By the time I started working, everyone had already gone home. The daycare was completely empty, and darkness had settled outside. I locked every door and began hauling crates between the basement and upper floors. The basement always unsettled me. It had low ceilings, poor lighting, and long narrow hallways filled with boilers, pipes, and storage shelves. Most of the space disappeared into darkness. Exhausted from carrying heavy storage crates, I hurried through the work, leaving some Thanksgiving boxes near the basement stairs while dragging Christmas decorations upstairs. As I pushed one of the Christmas crates upstairs, I suddenly heard faint laughter, a child's voice echoing softly through the empty building. Trying to stay calm, I searched every classroom, bathroom, and playroom in the daycare. But every room was completely empty. The faint giggles continued. Realizing I hadn't checked the basement yet, I slowly returned to the basement door and stared down into the darkness below. Thinking a child might actually be trapped downstairs, I rushed into the basement shouting, "Who's down there?" At the end of the hallway, one of the small plastic toy cars suddenly rolled forward on its own before slowly coming to a stop. I searched frantically through boxes and containers, but there was no sign of any child. The deeper I searched, the stronger the feeling became that something unseen was watching me. Suddenly, something plastic crashed onto the floor behind me. The sound echoed through the basement and fear completely took over. I ran up the stairs as fast as I could. Just before slamming the basement door shut, I heard the faint whisper of a child coming from deep below. Shaking with fear, I called my supervisor and then dialed 911, desperate for someone else to search the basement with me. The police searched every corner of the basement with flashlights, but there were no children, no fallen object, and no explanation for what I had experienced. Even after the police left, the fear stayed with me. I quit the daycare job before Christmas because I could never bring myself to go back into that basement again.